Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sustainable Materials Management Webinar Series, a joint effort between the National Recycling Coalition and the Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center. My name is Wayne Bowen. I'm the Program Manager for the Recycling Market Center and will serve as your moderator today. Today's webinar topic is Sustainable Materials Management at Universities, and our presenter today is Jack DeBell, who I will introduce in a moment. Following Jack's presentation, we will conduct a question and answer session. If you have a question or comment, please use the Q&A feature box located on your control panel on your screen. You may also use the chat feature to request assistance if you're experiencing technical difficulties during the webinar. Please note that an edited version of this webinar will be made available for viewing via YouTube links on both the National Recycling Coalition and Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center websites. And now I'd like to introduce our presenter. Jack DeBell recently retired from the University of Colorado's recycling program after more than 30 years. His accomplishments include help co-founding the College and University Recycling Council, leading an internship program for students interested in recycling careers, publishing a Decision Maker's Guide to Recycling, and advancing Colorado's Zero Waste Plan. He was recognized with the university's highest staff honor, Robert Stearns Award, in 1997. And so I'm going to turn the program over to Jack, and I believe we have a poll launched with some 4 questions. So if you could respond to them on the chat, answering yes or no. The first 2 questions are yes or no questions, and then 3 and 4 are yes and no, and then we ask you to provide some information regarding your answer. Okay, Jack, it's all yours.
Good morning, Wayne. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, you're good.
Good. Hi, folks. Jack DeBell here, calling from Lyons, Colorado, in the comfort of my remote working office. I thought I'd have video to share my freshly shaven face today with my Oxford shirt and all, but it doesn't look like that's happening. All you get to see is my PowerPoint and a few websites that I'll take you to. I am excited to be here with you today. I didn't have much time to prepare, but did put together some points that I'll share today, and hopefully you'll get something out of it. Thank you, Wayne, for trying to meet my request to make this presentation as interactive as possible. And I would encourage you all to use the chat function to share resources of your own, give examples, list websites that you may have so other people can see them. Wayne, if you wouldn't mind, I made this mistake in a previous Zoom conference to copy those chat comments, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay.
So we have those to follow up with. And also, if you haven't already taken the polls, go ahead and do that, though I will defer to them or reference them throughout the presentation. So let's see. With that, let me give a round of thanks first to Wayne and the crew at the Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center, who really have done an outstanding job providing this public service from the base of a higher education institution. So this partnership that the Market Center has provided with the National Recycling Coalition over the years to deliver dozens of webinars is really a great example. Wayne, I hope I can count on you later in the presentation to give a little talk about Penn State and the great work that you're doing for the citizens and taxpayers of the Commonwealth, as well as people around the country and indeed the world. I had a chance to take a look at the makeup of the audience today, and it's challenging as a presenter, I gotta tell you, because you folks represent all points of the recycling sphere or the industry, as we say, along with higher education. So I hope I get to meet your needs today. Let me also give a shout out to my alma mater and my employer for so many decades, the University of Colorado at Boulder. Some of you know, and as Wayne mentioned, I recently retired and advised them in a number of regards. I want to thank the university for giving me and our staff the ability to reach out beyond the ivory towers of Boulder, Colorado, and even the state and the Rocky Mountain region to serve the National Recycling Coalition and a number of other organizations that I'll reference. So I hope if you're at a university that you have some of those abilities and can spread your wings as some of us have done at CU. So I was going to do this poll, but Wayne sent me the registration list. As I mentioned, we've got a good cross-section. I'm speaking to right around 70 participants today from all walks of the field. And let me try and address your needs with this agenda. First, we'll talk about a status report of sorts of sustainable materials management on campus. I'll introduce the work that the Campus Council of the National Recycling Coalition is doing and the services that it's providing, both its members and non-members alike. And then, again, to make it as interactive as possible, I'd encourage you to complete these polls, utilize the chat feature, and let's see. I think, Wayne, you'll be able to unmute people at the end. If possible, let's see if we can do that so we can get some discussion going. I'd really welcome your input.
Jack, we can try that, but for some reason we don't have the chat feature on this webinar, so I don't know if they changed the settings for Zoom, but if you do have a comment to make, just use the Q&A feature.
Oh yeah, I see that. It's pretty limited menu screen here. Q&A feature. Okay, everyone in this webinar can see open questions. Wayne, can you see the Q&A box on my screen?
No, I don't see that.
You can't. Well, regardless, even though you can't see it on the screen as we proceed, go ahead and use it. I see that someone mentioned already that they didn't see a chat function. So go ahead and use the Q&A and we'll refer to that as much as possible. Wayne, would you mind interjecting with people's questions as we go along in case I don't see them?
Okay.
Okay, because I'm looking at a few different panels here and I'm going to try and share a number of different screens. So thanks in advance for bearing with us, and Wayne, thank you for trying to make this as interactive as possible. One final thing for today, you'll see these little green seals that will highlight some of the opportunities that we have for you to follow up with the Campus Council and work on your campus and in your communities. So you'll see those, and then at the end of the presentation, I'll collate those and you'll see how you can actually take advantage of this presentation. First, let me start out though with a very current and pressing topic that we have. And in a very old sketch, the three-legged stool of sustainability. And I just want to point out that in this day and age, we aren't doing a good enough job balancing those three equal pillars of what sustainability means. And I'll give you a couple of examples of why one important leg of the stool is missing. And you'll see factually that, for instance, waste to energy plants are routinely cited in areas of the country, and indeed the world, with populations that are least able to protect themselves both from potential toxic exposure, but also in their rights to live with a located plant nearby. This picture of Baltimore, or the Montgomery County's incinerator, I believe, has been taken on by a great group, the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. And I encourage you to dig into really some of the problems of how we're misusing our materials in areas that can least afford to protect themselves. I referenced the Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives as a very potent group worldwide with hundreds of groups in over 90 countries that is really trying to create a concept of environmental justice. And that's one point that I want to get across today. In fact, just a couple of days ago, our governor here in Colorado called to end environmental racism. When we talk about systemic racism, we have to think about the damage that we're doing to local communities, such as this one in North Denver. The Swansea Globeville neighborhood in North Denver has one of the most toxic zip codes in our state and is routinely subjected to toxic releases by this oil refinery, from a large smelter. So once we start tackling this, I think we begin to see opportunities to move ahead together. This is a great article. I encourage you to look it up on the Washington Post. I wanted to do justice to Ms. Johnson for writing it. So I copied a couple of lines from her that I think really brings it to the front, that how can we expect Black Americans to focus on climate when they are so at risk on their streets and in their communities and even with their own homes? How can people of color effectively lead their communities on climate solutions when they're faced with this kind of pervasive and life-shortening racism? So I also wanted to, there's a very eye-opening statistics that I'm beginning to inform myself with, that Black people are significantly more concerned about climate change than white people. Studies are showing that 57 versus 49% of the Black community versus white community are concerned. Latinos are even more concerned. So I'm sorry, I can't quite read Ms. Johnson's last remark, only because these darn men, here we go. Ms. Johnson needs us to understand that our racial inequality crisis is intertwined with our climate crisis. And she insists that if we don't work on both, we'll succeed at neither. And many in the community need us to step up. One moment, please. So let me give you a couple of examples of programs around the country that are stepping up. My program, my former program at the Environmental Center at CU, has actually revised its mission statement to, as you see here, catalyze and facilitate student leadership and ingenuity for social equity, economic vitality, and ecological resilience. And you can see some of the results of the work that the university is doing. When we begin using environmental justice as a filter that we base our decisions on, I think it gets to the core of how we can address the systemic racism that plagues environmental topics, as well as issues like police brutality. Sorry. One example of what the Environmental Center is doing is creating a leadership certificate program in eco-social justice, drawing on great resources, for instance, from movementstrategy.org, with documents like this, real practical guides of how young people can step up and make a change in our communities and our planet. So I did want to emphasize the nature of our triple bottom line and how we really need to balance these equilateral parts of our work. And this cartoon reads, with 2 of the 3 legs broken, well, dang, at least we're still making money. I think more and more people are realizing that they're not making money doing this, and that there is, I think, real reason for hope when our communities start banding together on issues of common concern, whether it's equality, environmental protection, and so on. So I wanted to sound a note of concern and also hope and promise before we dig into some of the details. And I got to tell you, as I'm becoming more informed of this, I tried to pepper in some of the activities and solutions you may want to consider on your own campus or in your company. So you'll see some of those throughout my presentation. Wayne, do we have a sense of whose organizations do include social equity in their mission? That was the first polling question.
All right, so I think I have to end the poll to find the answers. So okay, here are the responses. Number one, does your organization mission include social equity?
Let's stop there. Just want to hear that one.
24 said yes, 10 said no.
And so let's see, a good percentage, maybe 20% or not.
Yeah, 71 to 29%.
Okay. Good start, folks. We have a lot of work to do, and I got to tell you, it's energizing when we can address people's needs and then see them reciprocate with a sense of strength and participation that we're not oftentimes accustomed to. Very exciting dynamic at work that we're seeing today. Thanks, Wayne, for administering that. This is one of the, talk about operations a little bit on campuses around the country. And I did want to recommend ISRI, the Institute of Scrap Recycling Industries, for what I consider the most complete treatment of the coronavirus that's plaguing the solid waste management industry today. One of the important social justice features is to watch out for our workers. Worker safety is all important in everything that we do, whether or not you're operating a program on campus or you're contracting for a private collection service. These are the things that your workers need to know. And although I'm seeing some really great conversations in listservers around the country for higher ed and others, I've got to put a shout out to ISRI for, in one place, having some of the best materials. Highly recommend them. Let's see. Introducing the campus council a little bit. Let me talk about some of the things that the group is doing. First, around cultivating the next generation of emerging leaders and scholars. The NRC offers an annual scholarship program in the cities there that the organization conferences at. Last year it was in New Orleans, so we offered 3 students scholarships from that area. Great folks at Tulane, Dillard, Antioch University. We got an amazing emerging leader in Mallory she's done a number of great projects with Recyclemania and other things. She has last year won the Bill Heenan Emerging Leader Award that's offered annually by the NRC, commemorating the president of the Steel Recycling Institute and longtime activist and supporter of the National Recycling Coalition. So I'm sure he'd be very pleased to see the leaders that are emerging in this field. I think the sponsor of the scholarship, Murray J. Fox, who passed a number of years ago, left an endowment that we get to spend money out of to offer scholarships. Now, if the NRC and the Resource Recycling Conference is rescheduled for Austin, and I haven't heard that date yet, then we'll announce a round of scholarships for Austin area schools probably later this summer. We've done a couple of studies. This one is ongoing, actually. We've got about 70-something schools reporting, of small sample size, I would say. And if those in the audience are aware of more complete or more comprehensive studies, be interested to include those in future presentations. But you can see that really no campus or I should say, no large or significant campus in the country of the 4,100 or so that are active are really sustaining 90% or better diversion. There are a number of programs that have events and campaigns that are reaching that. I know for a fact that the university here in Boulder regularly approaches 90% diversion for our stadium events. But I think you'll see the majority of schools exceeding the national recycling rate, which is plateaued in the mid 30s, I hear. But many schools are doing much better than that. And that's an important point that I wanted to make here, along with some of the metrics that schools are gathering. And I would say that with programs like the Sustainability Tracking and Reporting System, STARS, ASHE, which is the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education, have really prioritized effective measurement of how well our programs are doing. I should note here that two important points, that in an effort to reach climate neutrality and deliver climate action planning, many sustainability offices are reporting on greenhouse gas reductions. And it would be a topic of another presentation to report on the increasing impact that waste reduction, reuse, recycling, and composting have on ameliorating climate change. So that's an important trend that we're seeing, as are recovery rates, which are distinct from diversion rates, and many schools get that difference. So of the total amount of a material available, how much are we getting? And that will vary between different materials. You'll see that at least half of the schools that we're seeing are reporting cost per ton. And this gets important as schools make collection decisions on single stream versus dual stream, for instance. We're seeing market rates for baled, even unbaled high grades sustain high market prices. We look for a robust market outlook in the future, and that bodes well for schools like mine that have made that decision to keep fiber separate from containers in those locations like academic and administrative buildings where we see a really rich fiber supply. Finally on this, and it's a bit disappointing that we're not seeing as much job creation measured, and we'll get to that in a moment. I'm curious to see how many schools as of 2 years ago that had zero waste plans under development have actually completed them. 2 years ago, we only found that of the 70-something schools that were reporting, that only about 20% of them had a zero waste action plan or a policy. So Wayne, do we have that survey? I'm curious to see what schools or companies and organizations have put a policy or plan in place regarding waste reduction, reuse, and recovery.
Yeah, I don't think I have that information available.
Okay, if you see that, I saw it on the round of polls. If you do see that, why don't you give me a report if people take that poll? Here we go, I'm seeing it. Okay, yeah. So it somewhat consistent. Okay, we'll get into some of the mechanics of policy and planning around sustainable materials management, which, by the way, I use more or less interchangeably with zero waste, and admonished on that a number of times. I do it in the spirit of collaboration, but I'm happy to split hairs and have that discussion if you want. The important point, though, is that we all have work to do, I think, creating policies and plans around materials management. We put a finer point on some of the operational successes that we're seeing around the country. The NRC last year awarded Temple University in Philadelphia the Outstanding Higher Education Award, largely in part for its social justice focus on the Give and Go Green program that they sustain, which diverts 5 tons of clothes and household items. Importantly, almost a ton of donated food. The money and materials are donated to a food pantry, as well as students who they're finding out are insecure in terms of their food supply. I don't know if I have the numbers in front of me, but their report was alarming. Just what a significant percentage of their student body had to make decisions on the quality and the amount of food that they had, which defines that as being food insecure. So this is an alarming trend, and I'm seeing it in affluent cities like Boulder and Santa Monica, and I'm seeing it in inner cities, to be sure. So I think anything that we can do to capture the largesse that we have when students move out of the residence halls, we should be doing that. That, of course, has changed. Things are changing. We're seeing schools not even offer residence programs in the fall. We're seeing a lot of schools shorten their semesters, ending them at fall break, for instance. A lot of movement towards remote learning. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but I think that is already having an impact on the waste shed, how much is being consumed and generated. Of course, it has implications for how safely our essential services workers who are on the loading docks, who are doing the daily collections, need to consider. Let's see. So another part of the formula for sustainable materials management on campus is purchasing. So in addition to diverting large amounts of densely concentrated valuable materials, higher education has enormous purchasing power. And when we flex that purchasing power, we see significant change, whether it's having a minimum 30% post-consumer fiber in all of the paper products sold at the bookstore, or having our grounds department specify high grades of finished tested compost to amend our grounds with in a way that reduce pest management costs, or preferencing biodiesel instead of pure petroleum to run our trucks with. And something I want to talk about next, the Green Core bags that many schools now can purchase from a product made in the United States, offered at a competitive price to virgin plastic bags that are collected and then recycled here in the US again. I'll talk about that a little more, but the point being is that we have enormous purchasing power, and that schools that are flexing that power are making a difference. I wanted to put this in here too, because I don't know much about socially preferable procurement, or if that's even a term. I know in some of our boilerplate that we at the university looks to promote business to women and minority-owned vendors, but I don't really know much more about that. So I think there's a whole body of effort needed to preference, incentivize, or otherwise making it a level playing field for competitive vendors that provide goods and services to our businesses and our universities. All right, so in addition to operations and procurement, let me focus on the third and final part of what I think is the equation for successful campus sustainable materials management, and that is applying academics. And in a survey that I'll talk about in a moment, that's ongoing and you'll be invited to complete. If you're from a school, you'll see some of what the schools are offering in blue bars. But interestingly, almost all of them have a higher priority than what the school can meet, whether it's certification programs or internships or career services and job boards. Many schools see this as a higher priority than, frankly, than they're able to offer. So we have more work to do in this area. And frankly, I hope to make my case of why this is one of the most important parts of the campus sustainability equation. So this is a survey that we have ongoing, and it's to identify schools around the country that are already doing research or applied learning in zero waste, and then see if they're interested in collaborating amongst ourselves and then being introduced to private companies and organizations in their area of the country or for their area of expertise that they can begin collaborating with. I think this is really gets at the heart of the mission of the Campus Council, which is to create stronger linkages between higher education and the industry. And this is one part of a two-part study that we're administering and we'll be reporting on later this summer and into the fall. So as an opportunity, if you're from a school, complete this research and development survey. Give you a couple of examples around the country. One of them really impressive at North Carolina State in Raleigh with their Applied Compost Learning Lab, or the CL2, which is a brick and mortar facility outside near their campus. They've got buildings, they've got equipment focusing on vermicomposting, or using worms to compost food scraps typically. The director of the program, Rhonda Sherman, is doing a wonderful job really returning a level of service to the taxpayer and to the citizen in as an extension service. And so this is one model that schools around the country have utilized to really make a difference, using extension service funding as a state university to deliver sustainable materials management training to the community. I wanted to also introduce our host today as another example of how a university, in this case, Penn State Harrisburg, has provided a home and other activities for the Pennsylvania Market Center. Wayne, if you're on the call still, would you, I really haven't found out much about the history of how this came to be, how Penn State Harrisburg is helping so much in the Commonwealth and around the country in these four critical areas that I've highlighted in yellow. Wayne, how did Penn State Harrisburg get such a great opportunity?
Okay, well, first of all, Penn State Harrisburg is the largest of the Commonwealth campuses at Penn State. We have 24 branch campuses, or Commonwealth campuses as we call them. University Park, of course, is the largest up at State College, Pennsylvania. But the Recycling Market Center was formed back in 2004 in response to RFP that was led by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. And that came out of a law that was passed by the legislature that basically said, we're going to create an entity to work specifically on the demand side of recycling, or markets for recycling. So Penn State Harrisburg, in their environmental program, a few of their leaders got together and basically came up with a response to that RFP, assembled a number of partners with the campus, and they in effect won the bid and created the center. Where, as Jack said, we're housed at on campus of Penn State Harrisburg, and as you see, those are our four main items that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. Outreach and information is what we're doing right now is a prime example of what we're doing. We're primarily funded by the DEP. We do some fee-for-service work. We do some programming that does generate some fees, but for the most part, we operate under funding from the Pennsylvania DEP.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic example, Wayne. I'm looking for state schools that are using land grant funding from the federal government to deliver these services. Has Penn State Harrisburg gotten that kind of contribution from, or given that kind of contribution to the Pennsylvania Market Center?
Well, not directly, but through our, the access to all the resources that Penn State offers.
Yeah,
They're kind of like our partner in a lot of the stuff that we do. They help us with research, um, you know, on all commodities basically. So yeah, we do work a lot with the university, the faculty. They do a lot of their research on recycled materials. So we partner with them in that regard.
Yep, outstanding. And I would imagine that it's a fairly replicable model for those state universities around the country. And in fact, I'm sure there are other schools that are using extension service programs to deliver sustainable materials management to the community. I just think it's a great model. And I think it's highly replicable. I'm curious to see other states. I'm aware of a few others, but I think it really holds great potential. One point that can't remember the source of this, but I think it was actually the Recycling Economic Indicator study almost 15 years ago that identified over 200 research and development centers for the automotive industry located around the country for geographical importance as well as academic department importance. And what was it? It was Neil Selman who pointed out that he wasn't aware of a single research and development center for sustainable materials management in the country. So I know there are a dozen or more schools that I know of that are doing this kind of important work, but I don't see us connected as a consortium. I don't see us jointly applying for funds or referring requests for research assistance to colleagues around the country based on their areas of expertise. We have a lot of work to do in this. Very exciting though, because a lot of schools are stepping up, including my school with the Zero Waste Lab. Kind of an important couple of points around this is that it sponsors internships and class involvement from a variety of departments. This isn't located in one single department, and as a result, it's a student fee-funded project in student government. So it hosts students from a variety of academic disciplines. In fact, we go out of our way to solicit applications from departments as diverse as international affairs and communications and media. In fact, we tried to host a student in music to see what she could do to apply her academics. And I think she was successful in creating some soundtracks for some of the videos that we've produced, which is to say that almost every academic department that I'm aware of has some potential role in building the industry. So this is a different model that can house interns from a variety of departments. We seek only upper division and not just internships, but students that are working on their thesis or research projects, both on and off campus being featured. I'll talk about the Zero Waste Lab a little more as we go forward, but I just wanted to list this as another example of the kind of schools that are applying academics to the field, and correspondingly, how off-campus agencies and organizations can tap higher education, how they can take advantage of what we're offering. In fact, this is a simple request for research assistance that we send out to off-campus entities about what they're looking for, what kind of majors they're desiring, whether or not they're paid, or whether or not their supervisor will provide letters of recommendation or written evaluation to their faculty member. So it's a fairly easy one-page form. We're soliciting research requests until the end of the month, And we'll farm those out to schools that have indicated an interest in housing interns that work for off-campus agencies and organizations. This is a simple recruitment flyer that we send around or electronically that allows people to request research for their projects. I'll get into detail about some of the recent projects to give you a sense of the kind of work that interns are capable of. One that I'll detail a bit is the closed loop recycling case study that we developed with the Association of Plastics Recyclers that demonstrates a successful closed loop system of capturing clean, dry film, baling it, getting it shipped to Indiana, where it's recycled into 70% post-consumer liner that can be made in custom formats for schools. You may have seen an earlier picture of universities like mine using them for tailgate recycling bags, for instance, handed out to cars as they enter their tailgate lots. Just an example of how students can really roll up their sleeves and get all of the cylinders firing of operations and procurement and the academic research that oftentimes administrators and campus decision makers are frankly too busy to dig into. Another great asset, if you will, of very eager college students that are looking to make a name for themselves or make a difference with their degree. And you're seeing more and more of that around the country. Another project that the interns took on with ASHE was printing and paper waste. So there are a couple of documents that they produced sent around campus verifying that at least at CU, recycled paper is 30% cheaper than virgin paper. And it produces 74% less air pollution, less water pollution, and some simple steps that they had suggested. Along the way, our students found out that there was just an incredible amount of personal printers that were still being used by individual offices. And they found out that these multi-function devices, instead of a personal printer, something that's centrally located in the building or a large department, are over 400% cheaper to operate. Not only that, they produce fewer toner cartridges, which as a result of the China fence and national sword directives have really constrained the ability to get these toner cartridges successfully remanufactured, since so much of that is offshore. So this is a campaign that the students really appreciated doing. They sent this on to our procurement office. Procurement worked with following up, getting more products available, and really going after a reduction of personal printers. Another project is our Computers to Youth, which bridges the digital divide that is opening between students that have needing access to internet and high-speed communications versus those that don't. The ones that don't get further and further behind. And those that don't are oftentimes located in areas of the country and in the Denver metro area that are underserved. And so this program brings high school groups up to campus, and with surplus computer equipment from our property services and college student mentors that are paid, sit with them, rebuild, reinstall, and then own a personal computer. Very successful program at bridging the digital divide, as I mentioned, and it's one of the most gratifying things that we do. There's gold in the trash cans, literally. And it's incumbent on campus as well as companies and organizations to do a better job managing our e-scrap, and reusing where we can those materials just makes a lot of sense. Another project is a spaghetti chart of where all of the campus materials go, what they're made into, which gives us information on what opportunities we have to buy the materials back in a closed loop fashion, and also where we could be shipping this stuff instead of overseas. Another example of how students can apply their research. Great opportunities for students to really follow the material stream. A couple of other examples real quickly, whether it's creating a food waste composting guide for the state, doing basic research to convert our fleet to biodiesel, getting architect students for design input to a relocated recycling facility that we commissioned a few years ago, really getting down and dirty with waste composition analyses, really a great set of projects that schools really can and should be doing, not just to measure their own success on campus, but provide this kind of analysis to off-campus partners in a way that's lower cost than what you would typically pay a consultant firm to do this, fairly empirical, and a great learning opportunity for students that actually get to see, smell, and sometimes taste what they're sorting. The environmental or outreach opportunities for students are well documented. That's perhaps where they shine the brightest. Whether it's using the EPA WARM model to convert tonnage to environmental benefits. Oh yeah, I like including this one. A student measured her materials for the day and the amount of recyclable materials in a week and in a month, and this is how much she generated in a year. You know, at a glance, her fellow classmates got to see what the impact of an individual is and how we can reduce that. I think students and campuses get away with things that you normally wouldn't see in a public square or town park, such as these large placards and signage that many schools are using to really drive home messages that are really graphic and get through the noise that a lot of students are exposed to and get to them in a meaningful way. Wayne, if you could raise that survey again, this is one of the most important things. This is focused on a school particularly, and I see that the majority of schools really aren't applying their academic work to projects on campus or off campus, although a good number of you are, and I'm very curious to see what those examples are. And I've asked to use the Q&A or the chat function, but if not, there are other opportunities for you to communicate with us by taking that survey that I'll get to remind you of taking at the end. Thanks for that survey. I'm going to close that. All right, so this survey is the companion survey to the one that I mentioned earlier. And this one's designed for the sustainable materials management industry that largely consists of public and private sector companies, agencies, organizations that are involved in waste reduction, reuse, recycling, composting, remanufacturing, and so on. So this study, I don't know if I have time to really dig into it, looks for the sectors that you might be involved in from the NAIC SC codes, I'm sorry, and then what kind of needs you have in research for your group. And then whether or not you're interested in finding some of these schools and beginning to partner with them. Some of the curricular resources that are available, the university in Boulder has, as I mentioned, been very generous in providing materials that are outside of the operations, focus more on assisting students' research, faculty course development, on a curriculum basis. These are some of the other resources. You'll notice here that the work that we do on the Boulder campus is in collaboration with the National Recycling Coalition's Campus Council. And I would encourage more schools to interact more with their state recycling organizations and indeed the NRC. Some of the work that you're doing on campus might directly benefit the municipal recycling program across your county. And then likewise, again, if you're an agency and organization, you're able to connect to higher education's resources. You can host a field trip. You can volunteer to speak at a class. You can go to your alma mater and see if you can help them. This is another ask. I think it's my third ask as I start concluding. In a great project that the students are really running with at CU Boulder, but we're looking for more schools to help administer the new resource center library on a national level. So we've got, gosh, over 150 some odd documents so far in these 10 categories. It's a simple submission form that allows our interns to use vetting and curation procedures to post those accurate and actionable and current case studies, presentations, webinars, planning tools. In fact, one of the students recently suggested curating a set of historic collections. Very excited to reach out to some of the elders in the recycling industry and tap them for their most important documents so we can get those up into the library. This is a turnkey program, I should note, for schools that are really ready to get involved. We have tutorials on how to work with the WordPress format. We have sources of information that your students can contact to curate this information. We think that in that process of the students getting out there and curating this information, first, it gives them direct exposure to what they're learning, what is most important for the industry right now. And it gives them an opportunity for high-level communication with your professionals. So I can't understate the importance of this kind of project that's already underway and how you can get involved with that. Here on the NRC's homepage, I'll just point out that this is the resources center that the students are working on from around the country. It includes the library. It also includes the dozens of webinars that the Pennsylvania Market Center, our host today, has produced in collaboration with the NRC. And just another shout out to Wayne and all the good folks there at the Pennsylvania Market Center for providing a recent index and YouTubes of dozens of webinars that have been archived. So I'd encourage you to go to that resource center, dig into some of the materials that we have there. Should also note that tucked over here in the Get Involved section is where the Campus Council lives. So go to the site. We have some time at the end. I can take you there if you want, and we can give you a little tour. I'll leave my PowerPoint, go to the web and show you around, but get there and get involved. Let me just conclude with some obvious benefits of a greater level of collaboration between higher ed institutions and agencies and organizations. For off-campus groups, it's great exposure to be able to partner with your local or a group of campuses nationally. By doing so, you're improving the body of knowledge that faculty members can draw from to teach courses that are more current and frankly that are meeting the higher needs that students are expressing. I'm hearing firsthand from professors that I value over the years where they're not keeping their courses fresh. They haven't even introduced terms like anaerobic digestion or zero waste. They have not kept up with the demands that students and this industry is expressing. Third, I think it's a great opportunity to energize your program with fresh faces, with eager, young, entry-level professionals that want to make a difference. By doing so, you as an organization off campus will likely find greater access to the school. And I hear a lot of difficulty from off-campus entities not being able to climb the ivory tower or break into the academic barriers that exist from higher education not being able to really reach out to the community. I got to tell you something that I'm seeing with more campuses closing and offering a diminished set of curriculum for students that are not even on campus or in a shortened session, that faculty and administrators, indeed the student body, the customer, is looking to off-campus opportunities more than ever to augment their degree. And so if you off campus recognize that you're seeing this interest from higher ed, you will have undoubtedly greater access. If you're a vendor, you might have greater opportunity to sell your goods and services. If you're looking to connect with your alma mater, well, that's easier too. And then, not to belabor the point, that we're seeing a great set of students and young professionals emerging from higher education in greater numbers, with greater skills and commitment than I have ever seen in my career. A great time to be on higher ed. So one of the final asks I would make is to really consider recruiting interns or somehow tapping the academics of your higher education institutions. And then similarly, for those of you on campus, the students that are in the conference today, reach out to us and let us know that you're eager and willing. Or if you're a faculty member or academic department or an administrator at your school, work with the campus council to create an ongoing internship program. Chances are we have contact with NRC board members or almost 20 some odd state recycling organizations that are affiliated with the NRC that we can do a matchmaking service basically with. So again, I encourage you to recruit an intern. Wayne, do you have that last polling question of, there we go. Good. This has the, I think the most, well, not quite. Again, I see more work that we need to do. Yeah, this is really good feedback. I hope that this was helpful so far in serving the needs and interests of the companies, organizations, private sector individuals that are on the call, and also, of course, my colleagues in higher education. I would like to collect more examples of the companies out there that are tapping academics, and we have that opportunity here in a moment. So yeah, this is, we have a very short survey on how you can connect with the campus council. And here's the URL here. It's typically geared to off-campus groups, since that's really who the campus council is interested in, making those linkages between higher ed and the industry. If you are from higher ed, you'll see options to note that in the survey and also to make specific requests on what you're interested in and what you can contribute. So here, in conclusion then, so we can begin some discussions. I see some questions being raised that we'll get to in a moment. These are the 4 asks. If you're from college or university, complete the research and development survey. Tell us how you're doing it, what obstacles you're facing, where your needs are, whether or not you're interested in collaborating with similar schools around the country. Second, if you're from the industry, complete this survey, Sustainable Materials Management Research. It'll give us an idea of where the needs are and how we may be able to matchmake or make those connections. Third, we know you've got great case studies, presentations, fact sheets that you could submit to the NRC's library. And as I pointed out, it's a simple 1-page submission form. And I would hope that each of you on the call could contribute some of your information. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, really reach out and create those opportunities for applied learning. And really to follow up on that, I would encourage you just to send us an email at campuscouncil@nrcrecycles.org. That'll get to me, our co-chair, Rick Anthony. We share that information with the NRC board on occasion in an advisory capacity for input. Great way to connect. Just shoot us an email. I think I'll conclude with that. And thank you for your attention over the last hour or so. I hope I've given you some information to think about and to act on. Hopefully I've inspired you a little bit with the need to embed environmental justice in our missions. And I hope I've given you some tools of how higher education and the industry can better connect. So thank you for your attention. And Wayne, I'll turn it back to you to maybe help me field some questions.
Okay. All right. Great presentation, Jack. We did have some questions throughout the presentation, but I didn't interrupt you you got a pretty good flow there, so I didn't interrupt that. So we do have some questions here and some comments. I think I'll work backwards here. Jack, can you see these questions? Well, the first one, I'll do the first one here. For the historical documents, do you know about the Recycling Archives project on Earth Island Institute developed by Urban Ore and ILSR?
I didn't know that Earth Island was involved with that, and I'm making that note. This is a great suggestion. I am aware that 2 members of those organizations that you mentioned are being considered for their historical collections, and I know that they're working in a movement or kind of a loose group called the Founders. We're in touch with them, so we hope to get collections from people like Dan Knapp at Urban Ore, Neil Selman from ILSR. Any other suggestions? And I didn't know that connection was from Earth Island, so thank you for that suggestion. Any others are surely welcome.
Could the NRC Campus Council apply for grants to do research projects together with one or more of the schools around the country? And does NRC Campus Council research available grants?
The only funding that we administer is from an endowment that I mentioned earlier that funds scholarships to attend conferences or to defray tuition. To the earlier point about fund development, I think we've been given a green light by the NRC in the fiduciary requirements in housing such a grant or sponsorship. And I think all systems are go to actively seek grant funding. I have a short list of potential sponsors that we're approaching. And if you are in that ability, if you have the capability of sponsoring us, I sure would welcome that. As far as schools collaborating, there are models that we're researching now for national consortia of schools that could apply jointly to national funding sources like the National Center for the Humanities and the National Science Foundation. We also have a great resource that I should shout out to in the Environmental Research and Education Foundation, who we're trying to make greater contact with as well. So all systems are go. I think we're ready to begin collaborating internally and then between higher ed and the industry.
How does NRC Campus Council work with the PLAN, P-L-A-N, AASHEE, and the CRRA Zero Waste Campus Council, and also the CURC? I'm not sure what that stands for.
Yeah, CURC, the College and University Recycling Coalition, which I helped found many years ago from the NRC as a technical council. It's a very good question, and it's a very pressing one and timely, because 5 years ago, a white paper was adopted as a policy position by the NRC and the Environmental Protection Agency, which hosted Sustainable Materials Management Summit at Maryland and College Park in 2015. And what came from that is a list of 10 steps that higher education organizations like those that you mentioned can be doing to serve our audiences, both on campus and off, in ways that avoid redundancy and duplication, ways that co-promote one another. Because I do see niches or specialty areas that some of the groups you've mentioned are focusing on. So let's see. I know we're in that CURC and the Campus Council are planning to revisit that white paper and put a survey together that we'll send out to the Post Landfill Action Network, to ASHE's group, and to some of the others, and some of the others you didn't mention there, to see where we're at 5 years later and what we could be doing to improve our efforts in coordination and then individually. So I hope that addresses the question. Stay tuned for that survey. I would defer to my dear colleagues in CURC to help move that along through their annual conference, if and when ASHE resumes, and so on. So stay tuned for that collaboration survey.
Okay. Are there other research institutes like UC Berkeley Zero Waste Institute that research hard to recycle products? And actually there's an answer here. An attendee mentioned they believe the Rochester Institute of Technology's Golisano Institute for Sustainability has a division in the remanufacturing and researches hard to recycle materials.
Good. I'm not familiar with Rochester, familiar with Rensselaer, but it's down the road, I think. And then the good work at UC Berkeley, for sure.
Are there any databases on where to find reuse/recycling/ closed loop options between companies? And there's a
hold on a second, Wayne. I want to go back to that one, because
okay.
Talk about I didn't address the hard to recycle material piece. And for those schools who want to pick up a really ripe action, kind of let's tackle nitrile gloves together. We're seeing at higher education and other institutions just copious amounts of them, only been fueled by the virus. And unless we take a stand on getting more extended producer responsibility from the largest manufacturer, Kimberly-Clark, we're not going to see real progress, and campuses will be deluged with this material and then have to afford the expense of sending them back to Kimberly-Clark to be recycled into some low-grade material. Plenty of opportunity to take on that project. We've got Kimberly-Clark in dialogue on that with their two largest suppliers to higher ed, Fisher Scientific and VWR, WVR, two of their suppliers. So if anyone wants to take on nitrile, let me know.
Okay. This question, I'll go back to that question I stated before. Any databases on where to find reuse/recycling/closed loop options between companies? And there's a follow-up question there. What tools do you use for data collection? Tips, tricks for accuracy?
Yeah. That's a very good and complicated question. I'm trying to dissect it a bit. One very exciting set of developments around the country are the states that are doing economic development research on the impact of secondary materials and sustainable materials management industry in their state, in their region. So I think that effort and the groups that are doing that holds real promise for higher education to connect with. I think some of those studies that I've seen are very rigorous and that would benefit from graduate level research that employs the kind of empirical and reliable techniques that good higher education research is known for. And as far as tips and tricks, there are plenty. Let's see what other questions we have, and I'll see if I can get back to some of them. Okay. I think I've peppered some of them through the presentation.
Right. Well, we're just about out of time, so there's plenty of opportunity here to follow up with Jack, and I appreciate these questions. So we're going to wrap it up right now.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
Thanks, Wayne, and thank you all for sticking around. I hope
Yeah.
I get a chance to see you in person, or even see a virtual image, or get a chance to collaborate with you.
Okay.
So stay in touch.
Yep. So we're again, this webinar, like all webinars, has been recorded. Will be made available via YouTube links on both the National Recycling Coalition and Recycling Market Center websites. Thanks again for joining us. We hope you'll join us for next month's webinar. I believe our topic next month is biochar. So please visit NRC and our RMC websites for schedule updates. Have a great day, everybody.